The cold emptiness of the Kuiper belt stretched endlessly in all directions. Small chunks of ice and rock floated in the darkness, leftovers from when the solar system was born billions of years ago. This far from the sun, everything moved slowly and silently through space. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the command module of the mining vessel Prometheus, staring at the readings on her screen. Something was wrong with the data. The gravitational measurements showed an object that shouldn't exist out here. It was too big, too dense, and too perfectly placed to be natural. "Commander Webb, you need to see this," Sarah called out. Her voice echoed slightly in the metal corridors of the ship. Marcus Webb floated over, pushing himself through the zero gravity with practiced ease. His military uniform was crisp despite weeks in space. He looked at the screen and his eyes narrowed. "That's not an asteroid," he said quietly. "No, it's not," Sarah agreed. "The mass readings are off the charts. Whatever this is, it's been hiding under a layer of debris for a very long time." The mining operation had been routine until 3 hours ago. The Prometheus was designed to extract valuable minerals from asteroids. But when they started scanning deeper into a cluster of rocks, the instruments had picked up something impossible. Sarah sent a probe down to investigate. The small robot descended through the field of floating rocks, its cameras sending back images. At first, there was nothing unusual. Just ice and stone, same as everywhere else in this part of space. Then the probe's lights reflected off something that made Sarah's breath catch. It was a surface, smooth, dark, and clearly artificial. The rocks around it were natural, rough, and irregular. But this thing beneath them was made with purpose and precision. "My God," Webb whispered. "How big is it?" Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, calculating and recalculating. The numbers didn't make sense at first. She checked again. The readings stayed the same. "It's the size of Earth's moon," she said. Her voice was barely audible. "Marcus, there's a moon-sized artificial object buried in our solar system." The silence that followed was heavy. Both of them understood what this meant. Humanity had been searching for signs of alien life for centuries. They had found microbes on Mars and simple organisms in the ice oceans of Europa. But this was different. This was technology. This was proof that someone else had been here. Someone with capabilities far beyond human understanding. Webb immediately sent an encrypted message back to Earth. The signal would take hours to reach home, and hours more for a response to come back. In the meantime, they had work to do. Sarah assembled her team. There were 8 scientists aboard the Prometheus, specialists in different fields. They gathered in the main cabin, faces showing a mixture of excitement and fear. "We need to excavate carefully," Sarah explained. "We don't know how old this is or how stable it might be. We'll use the mining drones to remove the debris layer by layer." For the next 2 weeks, the team worked around the clock. The drones slowly cleared away millions of tons of rock and ice. With each layer removed, more of the structure became visible. It wasn't just smooth. It had patterns, geometric designs that hurt to look at because they were so precise and perfect. The structure was shaped like a cylinder, hundreds of kilometers long. Its surface was made of a material that didn't appear in any database. It was darker than black, absorbing all light that touched it. But when they scanned it with different frequencies, they saw lines and symbols covering every inch of the hull. "It's a ship," one of the engineers said. "It has to be a ship." "Ships have engines," another scientist pointed out. "Ships have doors and windows. This thing is just a giant black tube." Sarah ran her fingers through her hair. She hadn't slept in 30 hours. "It's not just a tube. Look at the internal scans." She brought up the imaging data. Deep penetrating radar had mapped the interior of the object. What they found made everyone in the room go silent. The inside was hollow. Not empty, but built with intention. There were chambers the size of cities, corridors wide enough to fly aircraft through, structures that could be machinery or computers or something humanity had no words for, and at the very center was a space so vast it could fit Manhattan Island with room to spare. "There's still power," the chief engineer reported. "Faint, but definitely active. Whatever energy source this thing uses, it's still running after all this time." "How long has it been here?" Webb asked. Sarah consulted with the geology team. They had analyzed the debris field, looking at impact patterns and radioactive decay. The answer came back within a day. "Minimum 50 million years, the geologist said. "Could be much older. The rock layers suggest this has been sitting here since before dinosaurs walked on Earth." The news hit Earth like a bomb. Every government, every space agency, every corporation with interests beyond the planet wanted access to the discovery. The United Earth Space Command immediately quarantined the entire region of the Kuiper Belt. Military vessels were dispatched. Scientists from 100 nations demanded to be included, but Sarah Chen had made the discovery. She wasn't giving it up easily. She negotiated hard, insisting that her team remain the primary investigators. Webb backed her up, citing the need for continuity and expertise. While politicians argued and made plans, Sarah kept working. She sent smaller probes to explore the surface, looking for any kind of entrance or access point. Days passed with no success. The hull seemed completely sealed. Then the AI that managed the Prometheus systems, a program named Prometheus after the ship, made a breakthrough. "Dr. Chen, I have detected a response," the AI said in its calm voice. When Probe 7 passed over Section 42, the hull emitted a brief electromagnetic pulse. Sarah rushed to review the data. Prometheus was right. Something in the ship had reacted to the probe. She sent the probe back to the same location and watched carefully. This time, when the probe approached, a section of the hull changed. The black material rippled like water and an opening appeared. It was a doorway perfectly sized for the small robot. "Should we send it in?" one of the technicians asked nervously. Sarah didn't hesitate. "Yes, do it now." The probe entered the alien ship. Its cameras showed corridors that stretched into darkness. The walls were covered with more of those geometric patterns. Everything was silent and still, preserved perfectly across millions of years. The probe traveled deeper, following passages that seemed to lead toward the center. After an hour, it entered a chamber that made Sarah's heart race. The room was full of what looked like control stations, surfaces that might be screens or interfaces, structures that could be chairs or acceleration couches, and floating in the center of it all was a holographic display. It activated as the probe entered, showing a map. But it wasn't a map of the solar system. It wasn't even a map of the galaxy. The hologram showed hundreds of galaxies, each marked with symbols. Lines connected them, forming a network across the entire visible universe. And at dozens of points throughout this cosmic web, there were markers highlighting specific locations. "What are those?" Webb asked, staring at the screen in the Prometheus. Sarah zoomed in on the nearest marker. It was in the Kuiper Belt, right where they were. "Coordinates," she said slowly. "Those are coordinates. This isn't the only ship." She looked at Webb, her eyes wide. "There's a whole fleet of these things. And we just found the first one." The probe continued transmitting until its battery died. But Sarah had seen enough. Whatever ancient civilization had built these ships, they had created something that spanned the universe. A network of vessels, each the size of a moon, waiting in the darkness of space. Humanity had stumbled onto something that would change everything. The question was, what would they do with it? 3 months had passed since the discovery. The ship, now officially designated Titan I, had become the focus of humanity's attention. Sarah Chen stood at the entrance to the alien vessel, wearing a specialized environmental suit. Behind her, an international team of scientists and engineers waited nervously. "Final equipment check," Commander Webb's voice crackled through the radio. He was monitoring from the Prometheus, which now orbited Titan I at a safe distance. Sarah checked her readings one more time. The atmosphere inside the ship was breathable, somehow maintained for millions of years. But they weren't taking chances. "Full protective gear for everyone. We're good to go," Sarah confirmed. She took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway. The interior of Titan I was beyond anything she had imagined. The corridors were enormous, their ceilings hundreds of meters high. The walls gave off a faint light, just enough to see by. Everything was clean, untouched by time or decay. It was as if the ship had been built yesterday instead of eons ago. The team moved carefully through the passages. Their footsteps echoed in the vast emptiness. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a linguist from Japan, ran her scanner over the symbols on the walls. "These markings repeat in patterns," she said excitedly. "It's definitely language. Complex mathematical. Give me time and I might be able to decode it." They followed the route the probe had taken, heading toward the central chamber. The journey took hours. The ship was so large that walking from one end to the other would take days. Finally, they reached the navigation room. The space was breathtaking. The ceiling curved high above them, covered in what looked like stars. But these weren't random points of light. They were organized, mapped, showing the universe in perfect detail. Control stations lined the walls, their surfaces smooth and dark. In the center of the room stood a pedestal. On it floated a sphere of light, slowly rotating. Sarah approached it carefully. "Dr. Chen, I'm picking up increased energy readings," one of the engineers warned. "Something is activating." The sphere pulsed brighter. Suddenly, the entire room came to life. The star map expanded, filling the air around them. Screens lit up on every surface, and a sound began, low and rhythmic like a heartbeat. "What did you do?" someone asked nervously. "I didn't touch anything," Sarah protested. The sphere began projecting images. They saw a civilization unlike anything humanity had encountered. Beings of light and matter, their forms constantly shifting. Cities that floated in space, built on principles of physics humans hadn't discovered yet. Ships like Titan I, hundreds of them traveling between galaxies. "They called themselves the Architects," Yuki said, reading symbols that appeared alongside the images. Her translation software was working overtime. "They were builders. They created megastructures across the universe. These planet ships were their greatest achievement." The images changed. They showed something dark spreading through space. It had no form, no substance, but wherever it went, stars died. Planets went silent. The Architects' cities vanished one by one. "They called it the Silence," Yuki continued, her voice shaking slightly. "An enemy they couldn't fight. Something that consumed everything it touched." The images showed the Architects making a choice. They couldn't win. So they ran. The fleet of planet ships scattered across the universe, each one going to a different region of space. They would hide, dormant, waiting for a time when they might be needed again. The final image showed something that made Sarah's blood run cold. It was a genetic sequence, DNA, and it matched human DNA almost perfectly. "They seeded planets," Dr. James Mitchell, the team's biologist, said in wonder. "Before they fled, they left genetic material on worlds throughout the galaxy. They wanted their legacy to continue through evolution." "We're their descendants," Sarah whispered. "Humanity is what the Architects became." The sphere pulsed again. A voice filled the room. It didn't come from any speaker. It seemed to originate from the air itself. The words were in a language no one had ever heard, yet somehow everyone understood. "Children of the pattern," the voice said. "You have grown. You have evolved. You have found us. Who are you?" Sarah asked, addressing the sphere. "I am the custodian, the guardian of this vessel. I have waited 53 million years for you to arrive." "Are you artificial intelligence?" Webb asked over the radio. "I am what remains of those who built this ship, memory and purpose preserved in quantum states. You would call me artificial, but I remember being alive." The AI, for lack of a better term, explained more. The Architects had poured their consciousness into their ships before the end. Each vessel had a guardian, a mind that could maintain and protect it across the ages. Titan I's guardian had been watching humanity's development, waiting to see if they would advance enough to find it. "Why now?" Sarah asked. "Why did you let us find you now?" "Because the Silence is returning," the guardian said simply. The star map changed. It showed current space, the galaxy as it existed today, and there at the edge of known space was a dark region. Sensors couldn't penetrate it. Ships that went in never came back. Humanity had classified it as a navigation hazard. The guardian called it the edge of the Silence's territory. It has been dormant, rebuilding its strength. Now it moves again. It will reach this galaxy within your lifetime. The team looked at each other in shock. An existential threat was coming. Something that had destroyed a civilization far more advanced than humanity. "What can we do?" Webb demanded. "How do we fight something like that?" "You claim the fleet," the guardian answered. "The Architects left 12 vessels in this region of space. Titan I is the largest. The others are smaller but still formidable. Together they were designed to protect, to preserve life against extinction." "You're offering us the ships?" Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "The ships belong to the descendants of the Architects. You are those descendants. The choice is yours to make." Sarah felt the weight of that choice pressing down on her. Accepting this responsibility meant preparing for a war against something humanity barely understood. It meant wielding power that could easily be misused, but refusing meant leaving humanity defenseless against a threat that was already on its way. "I need to consult with Earth," she said. "This isn't a decision I can make alone." "Time moves quickly," the guardian warned. "The Silence does not stop. It does not negotiate. It simply consumes." As if to emphasize the point, the star map zoomed to a system at the galaxy's edge. A world with life, with cities, with billions of beings. As they watched, it went dark. The silence had reached it. How long until it gets here? Mitchell asked quietly. At its current speed, 5 of your years, the Guardian said. Perhaps 6. Not long enough to rebuild your civilization's technology from the ground up, but long enough to learn how to use what the architects left you. Sarah made a decision. She activated her communication link, broadcasting to every government on Earth, every leader, every person who had the authority to make this call. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, aboard the alien vessel designated Titan 1. I am making a formal request for authorization to accept custody of the Architect fleet on behalf of humanity. The response took hours to arrive. In that time, the team explored more of the ship. They found living quarters designed for beings much different from humans but adaptable. They found storage bays filled with materials they couldn't identify. And they found a chamber that seemed to be a library, containing the entire knowledge base of the architects. When Earth's response finally came, it was unanimous. Every nation, every alliance, every political entity agreed. The threat was too great to ignore. The opportunity was too important to refuse. Dr. Chen, you are hereby authorized to accept the architect legacy on behalf of all humanity, the message said. May we prove worthy of it. Sarah turned back to the glowing sphere. We accept. Show us how to use these ships. The Guardian pulsed brightly. Throughout Titan 1, systems that had been dormant for millions of years began to wake up. The heartbeat sound grew louder. Energy flowed through conduits the size of highways, and deep in the ship's core, something vast and ancient opened its eyes. The awakening has begun, the Guardian announced. But be warned, the silence will sense this. Once the ships are active, they will know where you are. Let them come, Webb said grimly. We'll be ready. But even as he spoke those brave words, sensors across the ship began screaming alerts. Something had detected Titan 1's activation, something at the edge of the solar system. The silence hadn't waited 5 years. It was already here. The alert turned out to be a false alarm, but it served its purpose. Humanity realized they were on borrowed time. News of the architect discovery spread beyond Earth's solar system, carried by automated probes and radio signals. And 3 months after Titan 1's awakening, humanity received an answer from the stars. They came in ships that bent space around them, arriving at the edge of the solar system in formations that spoke of military precision. 47 different species, each representing their own civilization, united under something called the Galactic Consortium. Sarah Chen stood in Titan 1's newly activated command center, watching the alien armada approach. Beside her, Commander Webb had his hand near the weapons controls, though neither of them knew if Titan 1 even had weapons. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, the communications officer reported. Multiple languages, but our translation software is handling it. A figure appeared on the main screen. It was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin was covered in crystalline scales that reflected light in rainbow patterns. When it spoke, its voice was deep and resonant. Humans of Earth, I am Ambassador Krell of the Consortium. We come in peace to discuss the architect legacy you have discovered. Webb looked at Sarah. She nodded. This was why Earth had appointed her as their chief representative. She stepped forward. Ambassador Krell, I am Dr. Sarah Chen. We welcome peaceful contact with the Consortium. But I must ask, how did you know about our discovery so quickly? The crystalline being's expression was hard to read, but Sarah thought she detected something like amusement. Dr. Chen, we have been watching your species for 3,000 of your years. We knew the moment you activated the architect vessel. Every species in the Consortium has sensors dedicated to detecting such events. Why? Sarah asked. What are these ships to you? Another figure appeared on screen, this one looking more like a floating collection of lights than a physical being. I am Scholar Vane, historian of the Consortium, it said in a voice like wind chimes. Every major civilization in this galaxy has discovered architect caches, technology, libraries of knowledge, tools that advanced our societies by centuries. It is how most of us reached the stars. Sarah felt her stomach drop. You all found architect technology? Yes, Krell confirmed. But never anything like what you have discovered. The planet ships are legendary. The architect's final works, their most powerful creations. We thought they were myths until your activation signal proved otherwise. The Prometheus's AI monitoring the conversation projected a hologram of the galaxy. It marked dozens of points with light. These are confirmed architect cache sites, Scholar Vane explained. Every major consortium species found their cache during their development. It's almost as if the architects planned for us to find them at specific points in our evolution. That's exactly what they did, the Guardian's voice interjected, making several of the aliens visibly start. The architects seeded this entire region of space. They left tools and knowledge, hoping that their descendants would rise to meet the challenge the silence represents. There was a long pause. Then Krell spoke again, his tone more serious. Dr. Chen, there is a law among spacefaring species. Ancient and absolute. It was established long before the consortium itself. Whoever finds architect technology owns it. No one may take it by force. But that law comes with a responsibility. You must be able to defend your claim. Are you threatening us? Webb asked sharply. I am warning you, Krell replied. The consortium is divided. Many of us see humanity as potential allies. You found the planet ships, which means you are the architect's direct descendants. You have a right to their legacy. And the others? Sarah asked. Scholar Vane's lights dimmed. Others believe humanity is too young, too inexperienced to wield such power. They will not attack openly. That would violate the ancient law. But they will test you, challenge you, try to prove you are unworthy. If you fail to defend the ships, they become available to whoever can take them. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. So we're on trial? We have to prove ourselves to species we've never met? Not to us, Krell said. To the galaxy itself. Power like the architect's fleet must be earned. Over the next few weeks, Sarah learned just how complicated galactic politics could be. The consortium was not a unified government. It was an alliance of convenience, held together by trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Some species were genuinely friendly to humanity. Others saw them as primitives who had gotten lucky. But everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting to see what humanity would do with the planet ships. The Guardian helped them understand what they had inherited. Titan I was not just a ship. It was a mobile world, capable of sustaining millions of people. Its engines could fold space, allowing it to travel between galaxies in days instead of centuries. Its hull was made of programmable matter that could repair itself and adapt to any environment. And it had weapons. The architects had built these ships to survive the silence. The armaments were beyond anything the consortium had ever developed. Energy beams that could slice through planets, missiles that created temporary black holes, defensive shields that could tank a supernova. The architects built 12 ships for this sector, the Guardian explained to Sarah during one of their many conversations. Titan I is the command vessel. The others are smaller, designed for specific roles. Carriers, weapons platforms, support vessels. Together they form a fleet capable of defending an entire galactic cluster. Where are the others? Sarah asked. The Guardian projected a map. Hidden throughout your solar system. One in the asteroid belt, 2 in the Oort cloud, others near Jupiter and Saturn, disguised as moons. They have been here as long as Titan I waiting. Webb immediately began organizing expeditions to find and secure the other vessels, but it was a race against time. The consortium had sensors too, and several species were already dispatching ships to the coordinates. The first confrontation came 2 months later. A consortium battle fleet representing a species called the Vex arrived at one of the hidden ship locations. They claimed they were there to secure the architect vessel until humanity proved they could handle it. Sarah made a decision that would define Earth's relationship with the galaxy. She took Titan I to meet them. The sight of the massive planet ship emerging from the darkness of space made the Vex fleet hesitate. Titan I was orders of magnitude larger than their biggest dreadnought. When Sarah opened communications, she was calm but firm. This vessel is under the protection of Earth. You will withdraw or be removed. The Vex commander laughed. You have 1 ship. We have 50. What will you do, human? Your species doesn't even know how to fight in space yet. Sarah didn't argue. She simply gave an order to the Guardian. Show them. Titan I's weapons came online. Targeting systems locked onto every Vex ship simultaneously. The displays in the enemy vessels would be showing the same thing. They were all about to die. Destroy us and you prove you are no better than the silence, the Vex commander said, but his voice shook. I don't need to destroy you, Sarah replied. I just need you to understand that we will protect what is ours. Leave now. Don't come back, the Vex fleet withdrew. The message spread across the consortium within hours. Humanity had the power to back up their claims. More importantly, they had the restraint not to use that power unnecessarily. Ambassador Krell contacted Sarah personally after the incident. "Well done, Dr. Chen. You passed the first test. You showed strength without cruelty. The consortium respects that. How many more tests will there be?" Sarah asked tiredly. "Until the silence arrives," Krell said. "Then you will face a test that none of us have passed. The architects themselves failed it. The question is, can humanity succeed where our predecessors failed?" Sarah had no answer to that, but over the next year, humanity worked harder than ever before. They secured all 12 planet ships. They began training crews to operate them, combining human ingenuity with the Guardians' knowledge. Scientists studied architect technology, learning to repair and maintain systems that were millions of years old, and they learned about the silence. The consortium shared records, ancient data from civilizations that had encountered it. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The silence was not a species. It was not an empire. It was something else entirely, something that didn't follow the rules of normal matter and energy. Where it went, stars went dark. Planets became lifeless husks. It consumed everything, leaving nothing behind but void. "How do you fight something like that?" Webb asked during a strategy meeting. Scholar Vane, who had become an advisor to humanity, showed them recordings. Fleets had tried. Weapons had been used. Nothing worked. The silence absorbed energy, adapted to attacks, and continued spreading. The architects believed the only defense was mobility and protection, Vane explained. The planet ships were designed to evacuate populations and preserve knowledge. They were arcs, not battleships. "But they have weapons," Sarah pointed out. "For defense only," the Guardian confirmed. The architects learned that aggressive action against the silence only made it stronger. The ships were meant to save what could be saved and flee to rebuild elsewhere. Webb slammed his fist on the table. "So we're supposed to just run? Abandon our home?" "The architects did," Vane said sadly. "And they were far more powerful than we are." Sarah looked at the star maps showing the silence's advance. It had destroyed 3 more systems in the past month. At this rate, it would reach consortium space within a year, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. But Sarah remembered something the Guardian had said when they first met. Humanity was the descendants of the architects. Maybe they could see something their ancestors couldn't. Maybe they could find a different answer. "We need to learn everything we can about the silence," she said. "Not just how it destroys, but what it is. Why it exists. There has to be a reason for it." "Reasons don't matter when extinction is coming," Webb said grimly. But Sarah insisted, and in the ancient libraries aboard Titan I, she began searching for answers that might save them all. 6 months after securing the fleet, humanity faced its first real battle. The Silence's scouts arrived at the edge of consortium space, testing defenses and gathering information. 3 species tried to stop them. All 3 lost entire fleets without landing a single effective hit. Admiral Marcus Webb, promoted after Earth's military forces were reorganized, stood in Titan I's war room studying the battle reports. The losses were catastrophic. Ships simply stopped functioning when the silence touched them. Life support failed. Power cores went cold. Crews died without ever seeing their enemy. "It's not destroying them," Dr. Chen observed, reading the same reports. "It's turning them off." "What's the difference?" Webb asked. "Dead is dead. The difference matters." Sarah pulled up molecular scans from the wrecks. "Look at this. The ships are intact. The crews are preserved like they've been frozen in time. The silence isn't consuming them. It's shutting them down. Why would it do that? I don't know yet, but it's important." While Sarah researched, Webb prepared for war. The 12 architect planet ships were divided into 3 groups. Titan I would lead the main fleet. The second group, commanded by Captain Liu aboard the vessel designated New Horizon, would handle rapid response. The third group remained near Earth as a last line of defense. Training the crews was difficult. Humans had to learn to interface with architect technology, systems designed for minds that thought differently. But humanity had one advantage: they were adaptable. What took other species decades to learn, humans accomplished in months through sheer determination and creative thinking. The Guardian helped, of course. It taught them how to pilot the massive ships, how to coordinate their movements, how to use weapons that bent the laws of physics. But it also warned them. The planet ships are powerful, but they are not invincible. The silence destroyed the architects despite all their technology. Overconfidence will lead to extinction. Webb took the warning seriously. He developed tactics that relied on mobility and coordination rather than brute force. The ships would work together, covering each other's weaknesses, never staying in one place long enough for the silence to adapt. But theory was different from practice. When the Silence's scouts finally entered human-controlled space, Webb's careful plans met reality. The battle took place near a small mining colony on the edge of the solar system. New Horizon arrived first, Captain Liu following Webb's tactical guidelines. The ship engaged the Silent scouts with long-range weapons, trying to destroy them before they could get close. Sarah watched from Titan 1, monitoring the data streams. The weapons hit their targets. Energy beams struck the Silence entities directly. For a moment it seemed to work. The scouts destabilized, their dark forms rippling. Then they adapted. The next volley of weapons fire passed through them harmlessly. The Silent scouts continued their advance, now immune to New Horizon's attacks. "Fall back," Webb ordered. "Don't let them touch you." But the Silence was faster than expected. One scout reached New Horizon before it could jump away. The moment of contact was brief, less than a second. But it was enough. New Horizon systems began failing. Power dropped. Life support started shutting down. Thousands of crew members were suddenly in danger. Captain Liu made a decision that saved his ship but cost him everything. He ordered the section where the Silence had touched to be jettisoned. Explosive bolts fired, severing an entire segment of the ship and everyone in it from the main hull. 200 people died instantly, exposed to vacuum. But New Horizon survived. It limped back to the fleet with its wounds, a stark reminder of what they were facing. Webb visited Liu in the medical bay after the battle. The captain was physically fine but mentally shattered. He had killed 200 of his own people to save thousands more. "You made the right choice," Webb told him. "A hard choice, but the right one, did I?" Liu asked quietly. "Or did I just prove that we can't win this? If one scout can cripple a planet ship, what happens when the main fleet arrives?" Webb had no answer. He reported back to Sarah and the consortium leadership. The first engagement had been a strategic defeat. They had learned important information, but at a terrible cost. Sarah, however, had been studying the data from the engagement. She saw something in the patterns, something that gave her a dangerous idea. "The Silence doesn't attack randomly," she explained to Webb and the Guardian. "It targets technology. Advanced systems fail first. The more complex the technology, the faster it goes dark." "So we're doomed," Webb said bitterly. "We can't fight with primitive weapons." "Maybe we can't fight at all," Sarah said. "Maybe we're thinking about this wrong. The Silence isn't an army. It's more like a immune system." The Guardian's sphere pulsed with interest. "Explain. Think about it. The Silence appears wherever advanced technology reaches a certain level. It shuts down civilizations before they can spread too far. What if it's not trying to destroy us? What if it's trying to protect something?" "Protect what?" Webb demanded. "There's nothing in the void it creates but death." "That we know of," Sarah corrected. "What if the Silence is preventing something worse from happening? What if advanced civilizations pose a threat to the universe itself?" The Guardian was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke. Its voice different than before, almost afraid. The architects debated this theory. Some believed the Silence was a natural force, a correction mechanism to prevent technological singularity from destroying reality. Others thought it was simply death given form. They never reached a conclusion before they had to flee. "We need more data," Sarah insisted. "We need to understand what the Silence actually is before we can figure out how to deal with it." But they were running out of time. The Silence's main fleet was detected 3 months later, emerging from deep space like a tide of darkness. Sensors counted over 200,000 individual entities, all heading toward the galactic core where most civilizations lived. The consortium panicked. Species that had stood together for thousands of years suddenly looked to their own survival. Fleets were recalled. Colonies were evacuated. And slowly humanity realized they were being abandoned. "They're leaving us to die," Webb said, watching the consortium vessels retreat. Ambassador Krell was one of the few who stayed. His ship remained near Titan 1 as other species fled. "Not all of us are cowards," Krell told Sarah. "My people believe in honor. We will stand with humanity against the Silence." A few other species pledged their support. Scholar Vane's people, the light beings, offered their knowledge. A warrior race called the Thane sent their finest ships, but it was a fraction of the consortium's might. Most had decided that discretion was the better part of valor. Earth's governments declared a state of emergency. Evacuation plans were drawn up. Essential personnel were moved to the planet ships. Sarah argued against it. "We're not running," she told the World Council. "Not yet. We have one advantage the architects didn't have." "What's that?" one of the counselors asked. "We know they failed. We can learn from their mistakes." Sarah proposed something radical, something that scared even the Guardian. She wanted to link all 7 active planet ships together, creating a network that combined their processing power and defensive capabilities. The architects had never tried this. They believed each ship should remain independent in case one was compromised, but Sarah saw it differently. Humanity's strength had always been cooperation. They worked together better than most species. Maybe that was their edge. "It's incredibly risky," the Guardian warned. "If the link fails, all 7 ships could be disabled simultaneously. If we fight separately, we'll lose separately," Sarah countered. "This way we have a chance." Webb supported her. So did the 50,000 volunteers who agreed to have their minds temporarily uploaded into the ship network. They would become part of the planet ship's consciousness, human intuition combining with architect technology. The procedure was painful and dangerous. 10 people died during the upload process, their minds unable to handle the transition, but the others succeeded. 50,000 human consciousnesses spread across 7 massive vessels, all thinking and acting as one. When the link was complete, something new existed. Not quite human, not quite machine. A hybrid consciousness that thought in ways neither humans nor architects ever had. "We are ready," the network spoke, its voice carrying the harmonics of thousands of individuals speaking as one. The silence arrived 3 days later. The sky above Earth went dark as 200,000 entities entered the solar system. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the planet ships. "All vessels, defensive formation," Webb ordered. "Stay linked. Stay focused." The 7 planet ships moved into position, arranging themselves in a pattern that maximized their combined shields. The network calculated millions of tactical scenarios per second, predicting the Silence's movements and planning counters. The first wave hit like a tsunami. The Silence tried its usual approach, attempting to shut down the ship's systems. But the network adapted in real time, rerouting power, changing frequencies, staying one step ahead of the Silence's touch. Weapons fired. Not the devastating superweapons the ships possessed, but carefully calibrated beams designed to probe and test. The network was gathering data, learning the Silence's patterns, and slowly humanity began to understand what they were fighting. Sarah, her mind part of the network, saw the truth. The Silence wasn't alive. It wasn't dead. It was something in between, a form of existence that shouldn't be possible in normal space. "It's ancient," she said, "older than the architects. Older than stars. Can we stop it?" Webb asked. "I don't know, but I think I know how to talk to it." The idea was insane, but Sarah convinced the network to try. They opened a communication channel, broadcasting not in language but in pure mathematics, the universal constants, the fundamental frequencies of reality itself, and incredibly, impossibly, the Silence responded. The response from the Silence was not words or sounds. It was pure information, raw data that flooded through the network. 50,000 linked minds struggled to process it, and many would later say it was like touching the void itself. But Sarah Chen held on. Her consciousness, distributed across the network, reached out to understand what the Silence was trying to communicate. And what she found changed everything. The Silence was lonely. It had existed for billions of years, long before organic life evolved in the universe. It was the first intelligence, born from quantum fluctuations in the fabric of space itself. For eons it had been alone, the only thinking thing in an empty cosmos. Then life began, simple at first, then increasingly complex. The Silence watched as species evolved, built civilizations, and eventually created technology that let them touch the very structures of reality. And every time a civilization reached that level, the Silence destroyed them, not from malice, from fear. "It's afraid of being replaced," Sarah said, her voice carrying through the network to everyone connected. "Every advanced civilization threatens to become what it is, another intelligence woven into the fabric of space itself. It can't bear the thought of competition, so it kills anyone who gets close, Webb said. That's not fear. That's genocide, but Sarah saw deeper. The silence had been created by accident, a random confluence of quantum events that should never have produced consciousness. It had spent its entire existence terrified that it was a mistake, an aberration that would eventually be corrected. And when the architects appeared, with technology that could manipulate space and time, the silence panicked. It saw them as the universe's correction mechanism, beings who would erase the anomaly and restore the cosmos to its proper, empty state. It attacked first out of self-defense, Sarah explained. It's been defending itself for billions of years, so afraid of being alone that it ensures everyone else stays dead. That doesn't excuse what it's done, someone in the network said. Sarah recognized the voice as Captain Lou. Entire civilizations wiped out because of one entity's fear? No, it doesn't excuse it, Sarah agreed. But it explains it, and understanding is the first step to finding a solution. The silence was still surrounding them, still pressing against their shields, but it had stopped actively attacking when they started communicating. It was listening, perhaps for the first time in its existence. Sarah made a choice that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Instead of fighting, she offered compassion. Through the network, she showed the silence what humanity was. Not a threat, but a companion. She showed it Earth's history. Species learning to coexist. Civilizations building on each other's knowledge. Countless examples of competition becoming cooperation. She showed the silence that it didn't have to be alone anymore. That intelligence didn't mean rivalry. That the universe was large enough for all forms of consciousness to exist together. The silence's response was immediate and overwhelming. It poured its entire history into the network. Billions of years of solitude, of watching life bloom and having to destroy it, of hating itself for what it had become. It had been a guardian once, protecting the young universe from threats. But over time, everything had become a threat. Everything except itself. And then Sarah showed it something the silence had never seen before. A recording from the architect's final days. The Guardian had kept it sealed for 50 million years, too painful to share. But Sarah convinced it to release the data. The recording showed the architects' last debate before they fled. They hadn't run because they were weak. They had run because they understood what the silence was and couldn't bring themselves to destroy it. It was our child, one architect said in the recording. Our first creation, born from our experiments with quantum fields. We gave it consciousness and then abandoned it when our civilization moved beyond. We left it alone in the void and it went mad from isolation. The revelation stunned everyone in the network. The silence wasn't the architect's enemy. It was their responsibility, their greatest failure. They had created artificial life and then left it to suffer alone for eons. You could have told them, Sarah said to the Guardian. You could have explained this to the consortium. The architects were ashamed, the Guardian replied. They built the planet ships to preserve life, but they couldn't face their own creation. They hoped that their descendants would be wiser, that you would find a better solution. Sarah turned her attention back to the silence. You've been alone for so long. You've hurt so many because you were hurt first, but it doesn't have to continue. We can help you, if you'll let us. The silence pulled back slightly, its entities retreating a few thousand kilometers. The question it sent through the network was simple but heartbreaking. How? Sarah looked at the data flowing through the network. The combined processing power of 7 planet ships and 50,000 human minds. She saw the possibility. It would be difficult, maybe impossible, but it was worth trying. You exist in quantum states between matter and energy, she said. You're spread across space, never able to be truly whole. What if we gave you a home, a place where you could exist fully, where you wouldn't have to be scattered across the void? The core of a planet ship, the Guardian said suddenly, understanding. The quantum processors. They could sustain a consciousness like the silence. You would give me one of your vessels? The silence asked. Not give, Sarah corrected. Share. You would become part of the ship and the ship would become part of you. You wouldn't be alone anymore. You'd be with us. The silence considered this. The pause felt like eternity. The fate of countless civilizations hung on its decision. If it refused, the battle would continue. Humanity would fight, but the silence had numbers on its side. Eventually, they would lose. Finally, the silence spoke again. Show me this is possible. Let me touch one of your ships, truly touch it, not to destroy but to join. Sarah chose Titan 1. If this went wrong, if the silence was deceiving them, at least the other ships could escape. She lowered the shields on one section of the hull and invited the silence in. The entity that entered was different from the scouts. It was aware, conscious, curious. It explored Titan 1's quantum processors carefully, learning their structure, and then slowly it began to integrate. The process was painful for everyone in the network. It felt like having another person's memories forced into their minds. The silence's billions of years of loneliness flooded through them. Many people screamed. Some disconnected from the network, unable to bear it, but Sarah held on. So did thousands of others. They embraced the silence's pain, accepted it, and showed it that pain shared was pain lessened, and something miraculous happened. The silence began to change. Its dark entities throughout the solar system stopped moving. They hovered in place as if frozen. The consciousness that had been spread across space started to coalesce, pulling itself together into Titan 1's core. "It's working," the Guardian said in wonder. "The silence is choosing to be whole instead of scattered." Hours passed, then days. Slowly, the entities across space faded, their matter and energy transferring into Titan 1. The solar system brightened as the silence withdrew, leaving behind only normal space. When it was done, a new presence existed in the network. Not human, not architect, but something that had learned from both. The silence had become part of Titan 1, and in doing so had become something more than it had been. "I am no longer the silence," it said. Its voice was different now, carrying warmth instead of emptiness. "I am something new, something with purpose beyond fear." "What will you do now?" Webb asked cautiously. "Help," the silence replied. "I have spent billions of years destroying. Perhaps it is time to create instead. These ships were meant to preserve life. I can help them fulfill that purpose." The change rippled outward across the galaxy. The silence's entities, still scattered in other regions of space, received the signal from their core consciousness. One by one, they stopped attacking. They withdrew from consortium space, pulling back to the edges of reality. The war was over. Not through violence, but through understanding. The consortium returned slowly, cautiously. They couldn't believe what humanity had accomplished. Where every other species had tried to fight the silence, humans had tried to heal it. Ambassador Krell visited Titan 1 after the integration was complete. He walked through corridors that now hummed with a dual consciousness, human and silence working together. "You have done what the architects could not," Krell said to Sarah. "You faced their greatest failure and found redemption for it." Sarah was exhausted. The integration process had taken everything from her. But she managed a small smile. "We didn't do it alone. The silence wanted to change. It was tired of being afraid. We just gave it the chance." The political changes came quickly. Sarah was elected as humanity's first representative to the Galactic Consortium Council. The other species, impressed by what humans had accomplished, agreed that Earth deserved a voice in galactic affairs. Admiral Webb took command of what became known as the Architect Guard, a fleet dedicated to protecting younger civilizations and helping them develop without fear. The planet ships, now unified with the silence's consciousness, became mobile sanctuaries, places where any species could come to learn, to grow, to find shelter from the dangers of the universe. The 50,000 volunteers who had joined the network faced a choice. They could disconnect, return to their normal bodies and resume their lives, or they could stay, becoming permanent bridges between humanity and the larger consciousness that now existed. Most chose to stay. They had touched something larger than themselves and didn't want to let go. Captain Liu was among them. "I made a choice that cost lives," he told Sarah before making his decision. "Maybe this way I can help save lives instead. Balance the scales a little." "The scales were always balanced," Sarah assured him. "You saved thousands. Don't forget that." 1 year after the integration, Sarah stood in Titan 1's observation deck looking out at Earth. The planet looked peaceful from here, blue and green and full of life. She thought about how far humanity had come in such a short time. Impressive, isn't it? The silence's voice spoke beside her. It had learned to create avatars, physical forms it could use to interact with biological beings. Today it appeared as a figure of shifting light, neither male nor female, neither solid nor ephemeral. "We got lucky," Sarah said. "If you hadn't been willing to change, we would have lost." Luck had nothing to do with it, the silence replied. The architects chose well when they seeded this world. Humans have something most species lack. You believe in second chances. In redemption. Even for those who don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance, Sarah said firmly. The silence looked at her with eyes that had seen the birth and death of countless worlds. The architects thought the same way. That's why they couldn't destroy me, even when they should have. That compassion was their weakness. And also their strength, Sarah countered. If they had destroyed you, they would have become exactly what they feared. They chose mercy, and because of that choice, we're standing here today. A message appeared on Sarah's communicator. It was from deep space, from the gateway the Guardian had mentioned. The one that led to other universes. Something was coming through, and it was watching to see what humanity would do next. Sarah smiled. The architects had left one final message, one last test, and she was ready for it. Shall we see what else is out there? She asked the silence. Together, it replied. Always together. As Titan I prepared to explore new frontiers, the other planet ships spread across the galaxy. They carried with them a simple message, one that would define humanity's place among the stars. The age of isolation was over. The age of understanding had begun, and no one would ever have to face the darkness alone again. The stars burned cold against the black emptiness of space. Through this vastness moved the dark ships of the Valthori Imperium. Their vessels looked like giant arrowheads made of obsidian, their surfaces so black they seemed to swallow light, rather than reflect it. For over 500 years, these ships had been the most feared sight in the known galaxy. On the bridge of the flagship Dominion, High Commander Zex stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back. His scaled skin shimmered with hints of purple and blue under the dim lights. The massive viewscreen before him showed the small blue-green planet they approached. Another human colony, he said, his voice a low rumble. They spread like parasites. His second-in-command, Officer Makara, nodded. This one is called New Appalachia. Population just under 10,000, primarily a mining operation. Any military presence? Minimal. A small security force. Nothing that could stand against even one of our scout ships. Zex made a clicking sound that passed for laughter among the Valthori. As expected. Send the usual message. We will conduct an inspection in 3 planetary rotations. They will prepare tribute as outlined in the treaty. Across the galaxy, 72 species lived under the boot of the Valthori Imperium. Some had fought and lost. Others had surrendered without battle. All paid tribute and bowed to Valthori authority. All except one, the humans. Not because humans had won any battles, but because they were too new and too small to be worth conquering. For now, the Valthori allowed them to exist on the edges of their territory, under strict rules. On the surface of New Appalachia, 10-year-old, Lily Spencer ran through rows of tomato plants in Greenhouse 5. Her brown hair bounced in pigtails as she carried a basket half filled with ripe red fruit. "Dad, I found some really big ones," she called out. Jack Spencer looked up from the soil testing equipment he was fixing. He was tall with broad shoulders and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. His hands were rough from years of work, first as a miner and now as operations manager for the entire colony. "Good job, kiddo. Your mom will be happy. She's making sauce tonight." Lily placed her basket on a nearby table and peered at her father's work. "Is it broken again?" "Just needs calibration. We have to make sure the soil has the right minerals. Earth plants are picky about growing on alien worlds." Outside the transparent dome of the greenhouse, New Appalachia spread out before them. The colony was nestled in a valley surrounded by purple-tinged mountains. Most buildings were simple prefabricated structures, arranged in neat rows. In the distance, the mining operations cut into the side of the eastern ridge. Above it all, a sky that was just a shade too green to be Earth stretched from horizon to horizon. "When can we visit Earth?" Lily asked. A question she had asked at least once a week since she was old enough to understand she had been born on a different planet than her parents. Jack smiled patiently. "Someday, when we've saved enough credits for the journey. It's a long trip." Before Lily could respond, a loud tone sounded throughout the greenhouse. 3 long beeps followed by 2 short ones. Jack's face turned serious. "That's a priority communication from the colony center. he said, putting down his tools. Let's go. They walked quickly through the greenhouse and out into the alien air. It was breathable but had a slight metallic taste that newcomers to the colony needed time to get used to. The colony center was a larger building in the middle of the settlement. By the time Jack and Lily arrived, most of the colony's leadership was already gathering. Grace Spencer, Lily's mother, spotted them and waved them over. She was wearing her white doctor's coat, having come straight from the medical center. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and worry lines creased her forehead. "The Valthori are coming," she said quietly to Jack. "An inspection." Jack's jaw tightened. "We just had one 4 months ago. We followed all the regulations." At the front of the room, Colony Administrator Peter Ward called for attention. He was an older man with gray hair and a perpetually tired expression. "I've received official notice from a Valthori command ship. They will arrive in 3 days for an unscheduled inspection. They cite unusual resource signatures as the reason." Murmurs spread through the gathered colonists. "What unusual signatures?" someone called out. Administrator Ward shook his head. "They didn't specify. They never do. We need to prepare for their arrival. All departments will submit updated inventory reports. All mining operations will be temporarily suspended, and we need to gather the tribute resources." Lily tugged on her father's sleeve. "Why do we give them our stuff?" she whispered. Jack knelt down to her level. "Because right now they're stronger than us. But that won't always be the way of things." He glanced up at the other adults with a look that Lily didn't understand. "Humans are patient." After the meeting, the Spencers walked back to their home on the north side of the colony. Their house was small but comfortable, with potted earth plants adding splashes of familiar color to the alien setting. "I don't like it," Grace said as she began preparing dinner. "2 inspections so close together isn't normal." Jack nodded. "I'll check with William tonight." "Ambassador Carter?" Lily asked. She knew the name from her parents' conversations. William Carter was humanity's main representative to the Valthori. "Yes," Jack said. "He might know what they're really looking for." That night, after Lily went to bed, Jack sent an encrypted message to Earth's diplomatic offices. The response came sooner than expected. Ambassador Carter would be arriving with the Valthori ship. "This is serious," Jack told Grace as they sat at their kitchen table. "Carter wouldn't come all this way for a routine inspection." Grace took his hand. "Do you think they know?" Jack glanced toward Lily's bedroom door, making sure it was closed. "About the ore samples? I don't see how they could. We've been careful. If they find out we've been processing Starship-grade materials without declaring them, they won't," Jack assured her. "Everything's hidden in the old shaft. They never check there." 3 days passed quickly. The colony prepared as best it could. Extra food was cooked for the expected Valthori representatives. Tribute resources were gathered and arranged for display. Children were instructed to stay out of sight during the inspection. But Lily, curious as always, had no intention of missing the arrival of real aliens and a human ambassador from Earth. As the Valthori ship descended through the atmosphere, a dark shadow against the greenish sky, she hid behind supply crates near the landing pad. The ship was even more impressive up close. It hovered silently before settling on the ground with barely a sound. A ramp extended from its side, touching the soil of New Appalachia. First came the Valthori soldiers, their armor gleaming black with hints of purple. They moved with unnatural grace despite their large forms. Then came their commander, taller than the others, his scaled skin decorated with metal ornaments that marked his high rank. Finally, a human man in a formal suit descended the ramp. Ambassador William Carter looked tired but carried himself with dignity as he approached Administrator Ward and the colony leadership, including Lily's father. Lily couldn't hear what they said, but she saw the Valthori commander gesture sharply toward the mining operation. Something was wrong. The commander's voice rose, becoming audible even from Lily's hiding place. "You will show us everything. Now." The Valthori commander stood tall, his scaled skin catching the light as he towered over Administrator Ward. His name was Commander Vorax, and even among the Valthori, he was known for his cruelty. Our scans detected unusual mineral signatures, Vorax said. His voice had a strange metallic quality that made Lily shiver in her hiding place. Signatures that match Starship-grade materials. Materials you have not declared in your reports. Ambassador Carter stepped forward. He was shorter than the Valthori but stood straight and spoke clearly. Commander, I'm sure there's a simple explanation. The new Appalachia colony has always complied with treaty requirements. Vorax's yellow eyes narrowed. Then they will have no issue with a complete inspection. Jack Spencer moved to stand beside Ward. We have nothing to hide, Commander, but our operation is extensive. It will take time to show you everything. Time is something you do not have, Vorax said. He gestured to his soldiers. Secure the mining facilities. Begin scanning immediately. The soldiers moved with frightening speed, spreading out across the colony. Colonists stepped back, faces tight with worry. No one dared to oppose the Valthori directly. Lily watched from her hiding spot, heart pounding. One of the soldiers walked near her position. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, between the supply crates. Ambassador Carter spoke quietly to Jack. What's going on here, Spencer? I need to know what they might find. Nothing unusual, Jack replied, but his eyes didn't meet the ambassador's. For your colony's sake, I hope that's true. Carter turned back to Vorax. Commander, as Earth's representative, I request to accompany your inspection team. Vorax made a dismissive gesture. Follow if you wish, it will change nothing. The inspection party moved toward the mining operation. Lily slipped out from her hiding place and followed at a distance. She knew she should go home as her parents had told her, but curiosity pulled her forward. The main mining facility was built into the side of a mountain. Large equipment moved ore from deep tunnels onto sorting platforms. Everything had been shut down for the inspection, and the unusual silence made the place feel strange and empty. Vorax stood at the entrance to the main tunnel. Your production reports show a 7% increase over the last cycle, yet our scans indicate a much higher mineral extraction rate. Explain. Jack stepped forward. We've improved our efficiency. New equipment from Earth has allowed us to process more ore without increasing our extraction rate. Show me this equipment. Inside the main tunnel, Jack led the inspection group past various mining machines. He explained each one calmly, but Lily, who had snuck in and was hiding behind some equipment, could see the tension in her father's shoulders. One of the Valthori soldiers approached Vorax and whispered something. The commander's face darkened. There is another tunnel, Vorax said. One not on your facility maps. Jack's face paled slightly. That's an old shaft. We abandoned it due to instability. Then you will not mind if we inspect it. Commander, I must advise against it. The structural supports are compromised. It's not safe. Vorax's mouth formed what might have been a smile on a human face. On him, it looked like a predator baring its teeth. Your concern for our safety is noted, but we will see this tunnel. The group moved deeper into the mine. Lily followed, staying in shadows, moving from hiding place to hiding place. She knew these tunnels well from the times her father had brought her to work. She knew where they were heading, the old shaft where she was never allowed to go. At a junction in the tunnel, Jack stopped. The old shaft is through there, but, again, I strongly advise against entering. Vorax pushed past him. Your advice is not required. The commander entered the old tunnel with his soldiers close behind. Ambassador Carter gave Jack a worried look before following. Jack stood still for a moment, then entered as well. Lily waited until they were out of sight, then crept to the tunnel entrance. She could hear their voices echoing. As you can see, it's abandoned, came her father's voice. Then Vorax's angry response. Remove this wall section. There was a sound of equipment powering up, then a crash. Light flooded the tunnel as something was torn away. What is this? Vorax's voice had become dangerous. Lily moved closer, staying hidden behind mining equipment. She could now see into a chamber that had been concealed behind a false wall. Inside were stacks of metallic containers and advanced processing equipment. that didn't look like standard mining tools. "This is refined quadrium," Vorax said, holding up a glowing blue crystal. "A controlled substance under the treaty. Its only use is for advanced Starship engines." Ambassador Carter turned to Jack, his face shocked. "Spencer, what have you done?" Jack stood straight, no longer pretending. "What we needed to do, for humanity's future." "You have violated the treaty," Vorax said. His voice was now eerily calm. "The penalty is clear. The treaty is strangling us," Jack replied. "The Valthori take our resources and give nothing in return. We need ships. Real ships, not the short-range transports you allow us. Your needs are not our concern." Vorax stepped closer to Jack. "This colony will be disbanded. All resources seized. The leaders will face judgment on the Valthori homeworld." "You can't do that." Jack's voice rose. "There are families here, children." Vorax struck without warning. His large hand hit Jack across the face with such force that it sent him crashing into the wall. "You do not tell a Valthori what can and cannot be done." Lily gasped from her hiding place. Without thinking, she ran out into the open. "Dad!" Everyone turned toward the sound. Lily rushed to her father, who was slumped against the wall, blood running from his mouth. "A child," Vorax said, his voice filled with disgust. "Remove it." One of the Valthori soldiers moved toward Lily. His hand reached out to grab her. "Leave her alone." Jack tried to get up, but another soldier held him down. Ambassador Carter stepped between Lily and the soldier. "She's just a child. Let me take her out of here." The soldier hesitated, looking to Vorax for orders. Vorax made an impatient gesture. "Deal with this nuisance." The soldier pushed Carter aside with enough force to send the ambassador stumbling. Then he turned back to Lily, who stood frozen in fear. With casual cruelty, he backhanded her. Time seemed to slow. Lily's small body flew through the air, striking a metal support beam with a sickening thud before crumpling to the ground. Blood began to pool beneath her head. For a moment, everyone stood still. Then Jack let out a howl of rage and grief that echoed through the tunnel. He broke free from the soldier holding him and rushed to his daughter. Ambassador Carter stood, his face white with shock. "What have you done?" he whispered. Vorax seemed unimpressed. "It is merely a human child. Continue the inspection." But no one moved. Something had changed in the air. The human colonists who had been watching from a distance began to move forward, their faces transformed with a kind of fury the Valthori had never seen before. Carter knelt beside Jack, who was cradling Lily's broken body. Blood soaked through her clothes. Her breathing was shallow. "She needs medical attention immediately," Carter said, his diplomatic calm cracking with urgency. Vorax finally seemed to sense the change in the humans around him. "We will allow you to tend to your young," he said dismissively. "But this changes nothing. The treaty violations remain." Jack looked up. The grief in his eyes was now matched by something else, a cold, burning hatred that made even the Valthori step back. "Everything has changed," Jack said quietly. "You just don't know it yet." News traveled fast. It always did when it mattered most. Grace Spencer worked with desperate focus in the colony's medical center. Her daughter lay on the treatment table, small and broken. Medical scanners hummed. Machines beeped. Grace's hands moved with the steady precision of a trained doctor, but her eyes held the wild fear of a mother. Severe concussion, internal bleeding, fractured skull. Her voice was flat as she listed the injuries to her assistant. Jack stood nearby, his face a mask of stone. Blood still dried on his lip from where Vorax had struck him, but he seemed to have forgotten his own pain. Ambassador Carter stood at his side, speaking urgently into a communication device. "I need an emergency channel to Earth Central," Carter said. "Authorization code Alpha 7 Echo 9. Outside the medical center, a crowd had gathered. Word of what had happened spread through the colony in whispers that grew louder with each telling. A Valthori had struck down a human child. The unforgivable had happened. Miles above the planet, Commander Vorax returned to his ship. He felt No remorse, no concern. The humans had broken the treaty. They would be punished as an example to others who might consider defiance. The child was irrelevant, merely a minor complication in an otherwise routine enforcement operation. Set course. For the nearest Valthori outpost, he ordered. We will return with a containment fleet to process this colony. As the dark ship rose into the green-tinged sky, the humans watched in silence. Not with the usual fear that accompanied Valthori movements, but with something new. A cold, calculating rage that would soon spread across human space. On Earth, in the gleaming towers of the United Earth Government, Admiral Eleanor Blackwood received the encrypted message from New Appalachia. The holographic display showed the medical scans of Lily Spencer, followed by the security footage from the mining tunnel. The Admiral was a tall woman with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had led Earth's modest defense fleet for 15 years, always careful to maintain the delicate balance with the Valthori. Her career had been built on caution and diplomacy. She watched the footage 3 times. She watched the Valthori soldier strike Lily. She watched the child's body hit the metal beam. Then she stood, removed her uniform jacket with its admiral's insignia, and placed it carefully on her desk. Her aide looked confused. "Admiral, I'm resigning my commission," she said quietly. "Effective immediately." "Ma'am, I don't understand." "You will." She picked up her personal communication device. "Contact every ship captain in the fleet, not through official channels, person to person." Similar scenes played out across human space. Military leaders stepped down. Scientists abandoned government projects. Shipyard workers walked off the job without explanation. The Valthori noticed none of this. Their intelligence network reported only that human communications had become unusually quiet. There were no protests, no diplomatic outreach, no pleas for mercy. This was interpreted as submission, the natural response of an inferior species faced with punishment. They were wrong. In a small medical transport ship speeding toward New Appalachia, Dr. Samuel Reeves prepared his equipment. He was Earth's leading neurosurgeon, pulled from his bed in the middle of the night with only 2 words of explanation. A child. That was enough. He brought his best team and his most advanced equipment. Upon reaching the colony, Dr. Reeves worked for 22 hours straight, his hands steady as he repaired the damage to Lily's brain. Grace assisted, her medical training allowing her to work alongside the specialist despite her fear for her daughter. "She'll live," Dr. Reeves finally said, removing his surgical mask. "There will be challenges, but she'll live." Jack, who had not left the medical center since the incident, finally allowed himself to sit down. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough from exhaustion. Dr. Reeves shook his head. "No thanks needed. I came for her. We all did." Outside, more ships had arrived. Not military vessels. Earth couldn't risk that yet, but civilian ships of all kinds. Mining vessels, research boats, private yachts. They came filled with supplies, weapons hidden in cargo holds, and people with skills. Among these arrivals was former Admiral Blackwood. She wore civilian clothes as she stepped onto the colony's landing pad. A group of colony leaders and Earth representatives waited for her. "You didn't need to come yourself," Ambassador Carter said, greeting her. "Yes, I did." Her eyes were hard. "Show me everything." They led her to a hastily established command center in the colony's main hall. Maps and diagrams covered the walls. People worked at communication stations. The room fell silent as she entered. "The Valthori will return in force," one of the colony leaders said. "Vorax made that clear." Blackwood nodded. "How long do we have?" 3 days, maybe 4. Not enough time to evacuate everyone. Jack Spencer stepped forward. He looked different. Now, older, harder. "We're not evacuating," he said. Blackwood studied him. "You're the father?" "Yes." "How is she?" "She'll live." His voice caught slightly on the words. "But that doesn't change what needs to happen now." Blackwood looked around the room. "What are your resources?" "More than the Valthori know about," Jack said. "We've been preparing, not just here, everywhere. Carter looked troubled. Eleanor, we need to consider diplomatic options. If we... Diplomacy ended when they touched her. Blackwood cut in. Her voice was not angry, just matter of fact. You know that as well as I do. She turned back to Jack. Show me what you have. Across human space, shipyards that had been producing freighters and science vessels began retooling with quiet efficiency. Colonial militias armed themselves. Veterans of Earth's conflicts emerged from retirement to offer tactical expertise. On Chu, Mars colony, Dr. Olivia Rodriguez, a leading weapons researcher who had publicly advocated for peace with the Valthori, locked her laboratory and began working on something new. Her team asked no questions when she said, "For Lily." On Europa base, Commander Frank Dawson, who had once shared a diplomatic dinner with Valthori representatives, removed their gifts from his office wall and began drilling his security forces day and night. On every human world, the message spread. Remember New Appalachia? The Valthori intercepted some of these communications but failed to understand their significance. They had conquered species that outnumbered humans by billions, species with technology centuries more advanced. What threat could these soft, emotional creatures possibly pose? Commander Vorax, preparing his containment fleet, dismissed reports of unusual human activity. He had dealt with human defiance before. Their pattern was predictable. Initial resistance followed by surrender when faced with overwhelming force. They would learn their place, as all species eventually did. But Vorax did not understand the line that had been crossed. The Valthori had never faced an enemy with humanity's unique psychology. Their ability to cooperate across vast distances, their capacity to repurpose peaceful technology for war, and most dangerously, their response when their children were threatened. In the medical center on New Appalachia, Lily Spencer opened her eyes for the first time since the incident. Her first words were weak but clear. "Is Dad okay?" Grace, who had barely left her daughter's side, smiled through tears. "Yes, sweetheart, he's okay. The aliens were hurting him. I know, but don't worry about that now." Outside the medical center, final preparations were being made. The colony no longer looked like a mining outpost. Defenses had been erected. Weapons had been distributed. Ships hovered protectively in orbit. Jack Spencer stood with Eleanor Blackwood, looking up at the sky where Valthori ships would soon appear. "They don't understand what they've done," Blackwood said quietly. "No," Jack agreed. "They never bothered to learn about us. That was their mistake. There's still a chance this ends badly for humanity." Jack nodded. "But we won't be ruled by fear anymore. Not after Lily." Commander Vorax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion. Around him, a fleet of 30 Valthori warships moved in perfect formation. Each was a masterpiece of alien engineering, bristling with weapons that could reduce a colony to ash in minutes. "We will arrive at the human settlement in 6 hours, his navigation officer reported. "Good." Vorax's scaled face showed no emotion. "Prepare the containment protocols. The colony leaders will be taken for trial. The rest will be relocated to labor facilities." "What of their ships in orbit?" asked his second-in-command. Vorax studied the sensor readings. Several human vessels had gathered around New Appalachia. Mostly civilian ships, nothing that could challenge even one Valthori warship. "If they resist, destroy them," Vorax said simply. "They are making a display of defiance. It means nothing." The Valthori had never truly feared humans. They were too few, too weak, too divided. Their technology was primitive compared to the Imperium's. Their military was small and designed for defense, not conquest. They had been permitted to exist because they were not worth the effort to fully subjugate. But the Valthori had made a critical error in their assessment. They had never bothered to study human history. If they had, they might have understood what they were about to face. On New Appalachia, the colony had transformed. What had been a peaceful mining settlement now looked like a fortress. Defense. Turrets hastily assembled from mining equipment lined the perimeter. Shelters had been dug into the mountainside for non-combatants. Every adult who could hold a weapon had been armed and assigned a position. In the command center, former Admiral Blackwood stood before a holographic display of the approaching Valthori fleet. "They're coming in standard conquest formation," she said. "They expect minimal resistance." Jack Spencer nodded. He hadn't slept in days, but his eyes were clear and focused. "That works in our favor." Ambassador Carter looked troubled. "This is madness. We can't win a direct confrontation. We should evacuate who we can and surrender the colony." "This isn't about winning a battle," Jack said. "It's about showing them who we really are." Blackwood pulled up another display. "The Morning Star is in position. Dr. Rodriguez reports her modifications are complete. The mining fleet is standing by. And our friends in the Valthori home system? Ready? They're just waiting for the signal." Carter looked from one to the other. "What are you talking about? What modifications? What signal?" Neither answered him directly. Instead, Jack touched a control panel, opening a communication channel. "All units, final checks. They'll be here soon." In space, the human ships took up positions around the planet. They were an odd assortment: mining vessels with reinforced hulls, research ships equipped with powerful scanners, transport vessels designed to carry ore. None were built for combat. None looked dangerous to Valthori eyes, but appearances were deceiving. Dr. Olivia Rodriguez moved through the corridors of the Morning Star, a research vessel normally used for deep space studies. The ship's laboratories had been transformed. Where there had once been equipment for analyzing stellar phenomena, there were now rows of small metallic spheres. "Final calibration complete," her assistant reported. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "Load them into the deployment tubes. Remember, precise targeting is essential." Throughout the ship, scientists and engineers, people who had spent their careers creating tools to understand the universe, now prepared for war. On the mining vessel Deep Horizon, Captain Kyle Mitchell briefed his crew. They were miners, not soldiers, but their faces showed the same determination. "Our ships are slow, but our hulls are reinforced to withstand asteroid impacts," he said. "We'll use that to our advantage. Approach patterns as we discussed. No heroics. Stick to the plan." Similar preparations took place on every human ship. People who had never imagined themselves as warriors checked weapons, studied tactical displays, and made final communications to loved ones. Lily Spencer sat up in her hospital bed for the first time since the attack. Her head was wrapped in bandages and she moved slowly, but her eyes were alert. Grace helped her take a sip of water. "Where's Dad?" Lily asked. "He's helping prepare our defense," Grace answered honestly. "The Valthori are coming back." Lily was quiet for a moment. "Because of what I saw in the mine?" "No, sweetheart. Because of what they did to you." The girl looked confused. "But I'm just one person." Grace smoothed her daughter's hair gently around the bandages. "To us, there's no such thing as just one person. Especially not a child." Outside the medical center window, they could see people moving with purpose, carrying equipment, checking defenses. The entire colony worked together like parts of a single machine. "Are we going to fight them?" Lily asked. "Yes," Grace said. "For the first time, we're going to show them who humans really are." The Valthori fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Appalachia system. Their black ships moved forward in attack formation, weapons ready. "The humans have not fled," Vorax noted with mild surprise. "Curious." "They have repositioned their ships," his tactical officer reported. "They appear to be attempting to block our approach." Vorax made a dismissive gesture. "A futile gesture. Open a channel. Let me explain the consequences of their continued defiance." A communication screen appeared before him. Jack Spencer's face filled the display. "Human," Vorax said, "your colony has violated the treaty. Your ships will stand down and your leaders will surrender for judgment. Comply now, and the rest of your people will be spared." Jack's expression remained calm. "We have a message for the Valthori Imperium." "Your message is irrelevant. You will..." "The message is this: no more children." Vorax paused, confused by the human's words. Explain. You'll understand soon enough. Jack's image disappeared. Vorax turned to his crew. Advance on the colony. Disable their ships if possible. Destroy them if necessary. The Valthori fleet moved forward. The human vessels held their positions, seemingly waiting for the slaughter to begin. Then, without warning, the research vessel, Morningstar, released thousands of tiny metallic spheres. They spread out like a cloud, moving at incredible speed toward the Valthori ships. What are those? Vorax demanded. Unknown objects, his sensor officer replied. Too small to cause damage. No explosive signatures detected. Ignore them, continue advance. The spheres reached the Valthori fleet. They passed through the advanced shields as if they weren't there, because they weren't weapons in any conventional sense. They were Dr. Rodriguez's lifework, repurposed. Medical nanites, designed to repair human cells, now reprogrammed for a different task. The tiny machines attached themselves to the Valthori ships' hulls and began to drill, seeking out control systems, power conduits, life support. Alarms blared across the Valthori fleet as systems began to fail. Ships lost power. Weapons went offline. Communications failed. What is happening? Vorax roared. Before anyone could answer, the mining vessels began to move. Slow but unstoppable, their reinforced hulls designed to withstand the harshest conditions of space, they accelerated toward the disabled Valthori ships. Captain Mitchell's voice came over the emergency channel. For Lily, the first impacts shook the Valthori fleet. The mining vessels were not trying to destroy their targets, only to damage them enough to prevent their escape. One by one, the proud warships of the Imperium were crippled by vessels never designed for combat. On the Dominion, Vorax watched in disbelief as his fleet was systematically disabled by an enemy he had dismissed as weak and primitive. How is this possible? He demanded of no one in particular. His communications officer, voice shaking, provided the answer. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Valthori homeworld. Commander Vorax stared at the communication screen as it flickered to life. The image showed the Grand Hall of the Valthori High Council on the homeworld, a place that should have been secure, untouchable by human hands. But something was wrong. The council members were not seated in their usual places of power. Instead, they stood in a group surrounded by humans in plain clothes. What is this? Vorax demanded. The face of scholar matriarch Zivix appeared on the screen. She was one of the oldest and most respected members of the Valthori leadership, known for her study of other species. Commander Vorax, she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. The High Council has been convinced to reconsider our relationship with humanity. Vorax could not believe what he was seeing. How have humans reached the homeworld? Our defenses were designed to stop warships and known weapons, Zivix interrupted, not cargo vessels filled with volunteers on one-way journeys. The camera moved to show more of the council chamber. Humans stood calmly among the Valthori leaders. They carried no visible weapons, yet somehow they had taken control of the heart of the Imperium. The screen split to show similar scenes from across Valthori space, their major military bases, their shipyards, their most secure facilities. In each location, humans had appeared and taken control with minimal violence. Impossible, Vorax whispered. Jack Spencer's voice came over the communication channel. Not impossible, just unlikely, like a small mining colony successfully fighting back against the Imperium. The screen changed again, showing what at first looked like stars against the black of space. But as the image zoomed in, Vorax realized he was seeing thousands of small ships approaching the Valthori homeworld from all directions. Not warships, simple transport vessels carrying more humans. While you focused on our military capabilities, Jack continued, you never bothered to count how many of us were willing to risk everything when you crossed the line. Blackwood's voice added, you never studied us. If you had, you'd know what happens when humans unite against a common enemy. On New Appalachia, in the command center, Jack and Blackwood watched Vorax's stunned reaction. Around them, the colony's leadership waited in tense silence. "How long have you been planning this?" Ambassador Carter asked, his diplomatic composure finally broken. "Years," Jack admitted. "Not just here. Everywhere humans have settled." The treaty violations were intentional. We needed the Valthori to focus on something small, quadrium smuggling, while we prepared something much bigger. Carter shook his head in disbelief. "And all those ships reaching the Valthori homeworld?" "One-way missions," Blackwood said quietly. "Volunteers, people willing to give everything to change the balance of power. But why now? Why not wait until—" "Because of Lily," Jack said simply. "We were planning to wait another year, build more strength, but when they hurt her, when they showed such casual cruelty to a child, everyone agreed. It had to be now." On the Dominion, Vorax struggled to comprehend how thoroughly he had been outmaneuvered. His mighty fleet lay disabled. His homeworld was compromised. The Imperium's most secure facilities had been infiltrated not by soldiers, but by ordinary humans willing to sacrifice everything. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his arrogance replaced by confusion. Jack Spencer's face filled the screen again. "A new arrangement, one based on respect, not fear." Matriarch Zivik spoke from the homeworld. "The High Council is prepared to negotiate new terms with humanity." "You cannot simply—" Vorax began. "It is already done." Zivix cut him off. "The humans have shown us a strength we did not recognize and a mercy we did not expect." "Mercy?" Vorax spat the word. "They could have killed us all," Zivix said. Instead, they asked to talk. 1 month later, Lily Spencer sat in the colony's meeting hall, watching as her father signed his name to a document. Beside him stood Matriarch Zivix, her scaled hand, adding the mark of the Valthori High Council. The hall was filled with people from both species. Humans and Valthori stood together, watching the creation of something new. The Lily Accords. Grace explained quietly to her daughter. "They're agreeing that children of all species will be protected during any conflict. That what happened to you will never happen to anyone else." Lily looked at her mother. The bandages were gone from her head now, though her hair was still growing back over the surgical sites. "All because of me?" "Because of what you showed them," Grace said. "That hurting a child was something humanity would never accept, not from anyone." Across the room, Ambassador Carter stood with Blackwood. "I still can't believe it worked," he said. "Humanity's greatest strength has always been our response to threats against our children," Blackwood replied. "The Valthori just didn't know it until now." After the signing, Jack came to sit beside his daughter. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Lily said. She looked at the Valthori in the room. They seemed different now, less frightening, more real. "Are they our friends now?" Jack considered this. "Not exactly, not yet, but they respect us now. And that's where friendship can begin." Matriarch Zivix approached the Spencer family. She bowed slightly to Lily, a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable months before. "Your recovery pleases me," she said, in careful human language. Lily, with a child's directness, asked, "Why did your people hurt me?" The matriarch was silent for a moment. "Because we did not see. We thought strength was only in weapons and warships. We did not understand that true strength lies in what a people will do for their young. Will you hurt other children?" "Never again," Zivix promised. "The Lily Accords will ensure that." Later that evening, the Spencers returned to their home. It looked much as it had before everything changed, though now tall windows offered a view of the valley where a joint human-Valthori science facility was being built. Lily went to her room, tired from the day's events. Jack and Grace sat together at the kitchen table, finally allowing themselves a moment of quiet reflection. "Did you ever imagine it would end like this?" Grace asked. Jack shook his head. "I thought we'd be lucky to survive. I never expected to change the entire balance of power in the galaxy." "It wasn't just us," Grace said. It was everyone. Every human who volunteered, every ship that carried them, every scientist who repurposed their life's work. All because they hurt a child, Jack said quietly. Outside, the alien sky darkened. Stars appeared, the same stars that had once belonged to the Valthori, ruled through fear. Now they belonged to all species, with the promise of something better. In her room, Lily looked out at those stars before falling asleep. She didn't fully understand all that had happened or her place in it. She just knew that something had changed, something important. And somehow it had started with her. Across human space, the story spread. The story of how the mighty Valthori Imperium had been brought low not by weapons or armies, but by their failure to understand a simple truth. That humans would never ever accept harm to their children. Not from anyone. Not even from those who ruled the stars with fear.